We are moments away, days away from Georgia kicking off their 2022 season. And I saw something on Paul Feimann's show with Pete Thamel. Now, Pete Thamel's been around the block for a while. I think he was at the New York Times before he's with somewhere else. Well, anyway, he's at ESPN now, and had two insights that were pretty that I wanted to talk about today. Um, and they can both be true at the same time. Well, no, they can't be true at the same time. He said, I want a little bit more empirical evidence before I call Georgia a surefire playoff team." He was talking about who will get into the playoffs. He said Alabama, Ohio State. His dark horse is Utah, which is, I think, a pretty smart pick when you look at Utah's schedule. The fact that they can go down, they should beat Florida. And I don't know how much, you know, I don't know how much street cred that will get Utah, but it will look really good at the start of the season. They also play BYU, who is not a bad team at all and can get some pretty big wins along the way. There are some curious, you know, non-traditional powers to think about this year. Cincinnati's still hanging around. BYU and Utah, specifically BYU and Utah. I think the two of them could come out of nowhere. Can SC? We'll just see. I mean, I think Lincoln Riley's got a lot of work cut out for him. But what Pete was talking about. I'm a little more. I want a little more empirical evidence. Yeah, me too. I mean, that's what he's saying is I want to see him play, and I do as well. He was discussing how good the offenses at Alabama and Ohio State will be or should be because of the quarterbacks, et cetera. The receivers were a bit of a question mark at Alabama, not at Ohio State. And his point was, hey, is Stetson Bennett as good as Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud? He doesn't think so. I don't think a lot of people think so. I wonder if the difference is as much as people think. But then this was really the comment that he made. If they roll it back and they are a top five team again, Kirby has recreated Alabama essentially. I think they will be a top five team. Um, I don't know if they'll win the national championship. And so when you look around the country and you say, well, who's trying to really go for it right now? Texas A&M, USC, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. Um, I don't want to say Texas because I'm not sure. We'll see. So um, I think the one program that is there are two programs that are trying to do it similar way, which are Alabama and Georgia. Everybody else's path is different, with the exception of Texas A&M. But Texas A&M is, I don't know about starting from scratch, but Jimbo did not inherit what Kirby did at Georgia. But we're 6 years into it now with Kirby, or seven. This is year seven. I don't know how many years Jimbo's been at Texas A&M, but it's not been a couple. I mean, he's been there for longer than a couple. And at SC, Clemson's got to fight their way back to. They've kind of gotten a gentleman's number four, because I don't know if people know who the number four team in the country will be. We've got Notre Dame with a new head coach ranked very high. The top three are sort of the established brands right this second in college football. And the question is, uh, who will get to the playoff and who will win the national championship? If you're betting against Georgia or Alabama both getting to the playoff, that's one bet. If you're betting they won't both be there, that's not a good bet to take. Okay, I would hedge against that one pretty hard. One of those two will be there. If not both. My suspicion is that it is more likely they will both be in the playoff than not both be in the playoff. And if my suspicion is true, that means they will be a top five team at the end of the year because they'd be in the top four. I mean, we've not seen a playoff team ranked below five, um, in the time that the playoff has come out. Not that I can recall. And so the more global point, though, is if they do that, which I expect, will they have recreated Alabama essentially? And that's what Pete's sort of thesis is here. I'm not sure they've recreated it completely, and I'll tell you why right after I make sure that you're aware. We have DAWGSTRUCTION. As soon as I get them in, they fly out. Don't miss out on this. I've talked about this a lot over the summer. The forward from Jeff Foxworthy is something to read. In fact, I'm going to read just my favorite part in it. Um, my granddaddy loved Vince Dooley. My granddaddy loved Vince Dooley. I once did a book signing, and Coach Dooley was signing his books at the table next to me. I asked him to please sign a book for my grandfather. He wrote to James Camp, a great friend of the Bulldogs. When I gave it to my granddaddy, I think that's the closest I ever came to see him cry. And talked about Jeff shared his experience with not just me, but a lot of folks about how emotional that win was for Georgia and Alabama, in Indianapolis over Alabama. But this book tells the stories behind the story. It gives you diagrams of how plays happened. It is a book you will not find anywhere else, only at Red Zone on Clayton Street and at the link down below. Check it out today. Thanks for checking that out. I think the challenge for Georgia is different than, and Kirby is different than the challenge that Nick had at the beginning with Alabama. By year three, the direct competition for Alabama in the grand scheme of things, Florida, they were gone. I mean, Urban Meyer was not there anymore. So if you remember, in seven, Alabama was 7-6. In eight, they lost in the 1-2 SEC championship game. I think that was 1-2. Now I might be wrong about that. One of the 2 years was 1-2. And the year after, and they went to the Sugar Bowl, lost to Utah. The year after that, they really punked Florida in the SEC championship game. And that game, that was it. Urban Meyer was done. Auburn won the national championship in 2010. And perhaps in that moment, it felt like Auburn was going to challenge Alabama. I can't really say that that was the case. That seemed like a one-hit wonder at the time, and it proved to be that way when you look at the 11 and 12 seasons at Auburn. LSU was trouble for Alabama. LSU and Georgia are the closest things that have been barriers to Alabama's dominance in the SEC in Nick's time. And, Auburn certainly has done more damage to Alabama than anybody, okay? Because they've just beat them at times where it's really cost Alabama. When you think about 13, 17 didn't cost them, but 19 cost them. I mean, 19 may not have cost them. It hurt them in 13. I can assure you of that. But in 10, so LSU, though, they were never dependable the way that Kirby's teams have been. Under Les Miles. I mean, when you look back at that time with LSU football through the years, uh, they they were good. They were not uh, elite. Like for instance, in Nick's first year, obviously in seven, LSU wins the national championship. Then 8-4, 9-4. I mean, that Kirby hasn't experienced that. And then 11-2, 13-1, losing in the national championship game, and then 10-3, 10-3, 8-5, 9-3. I mean, it's not been the same. Now LSU has had these spurts of greatness, but certainly in 19, I mean, that might be the best offense we've ever seen in college football. Certainly the best quarterback. I will borderline fight somebody if they try to say that Joe Burrow is not the best quarterback of this century in college football. Yeah, he's better than Johnny Manziel. He's better than Cam Newton. And those two guys, I'm trying to think, Matt Leinart, you had some guys that played quarterback lately. None of them were Joe Burrow. None of them. I mean, Trevor was good. Deshaun Watson was good. They weren't. I mean, if Trevor was so good, he would have beaten LSU, but that didn't happen. In fact, they got beat pretty solidly because of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was hell on wheels, man. That guy was trouble. But even with Joe Burrow, LSU went 25-3 and split their games with Alabama. So Georgia, the difference now with what Pete Thamel's saying is He's saying, you know, he's recreated Alabama, Georgia, Kirby. I'm not totally sure. I get what he's saying. Okay, I get what he's saying. I just think that and those of us who do what we do for a living, which is talking or writing, um, we try to draw parallels, but often they're not there. This is a different time. Nick didn't Nick didn't have Nick Saban's Alabama to deal with in 2009 and 10 and 11 and 12. And that's why they won 3 of 4 or whatever it was from, 9 and then 11 and 12 and came probably within a play of winning the national championship at 13. So his that was his best run. Is it possible that Kirby could win it in 21, not win it in 22, and then win it in 23 and 4? Yeah, it is. That would certainly be recreating Alabama, no question. But I get what Pete is saying, both to some degree with what his criticism of Georgia is coming into the thing, and then secondly with the notion of if they roll it back, and he was talking about all the guys Georgia lost defensively. If they roll it back and they are a top 5 team again, Kirby has recreated Alabama essentially. Yeah, but Alabama's still around.